Hi everyone, and welcome to the Fake Love and Flying Monkeys podcast. My name's Nova Gibson and I am your host. My area of expertise is in supporting victims and survivors of narcissistic abuse and other toxic relationships. I'm the principal counsellor at Brighter Outlook Narcissistic Abuse Counselling Service, and I'm also the author of Fake Love, Understanding and Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about everything from the initial pink cloud you find yourself on at the start through to the horrific discard and the powerful trauma bond that keeps you hooked. So take your imaginary seat on the roller coaster that is narcissistic abuse, and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode of Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. Today I am so excited to have another lovely guest. Her name is Sybil Cummin, and Sybil is a licensed professional counsellor who has specialised in working with victims and survivors of narcissistic abuse and domestic violence for the last decade, including the child victims in these families. She owns a small group therapy practice in Colorado, and after witnessing the constant ethical issues survivors experience in the family court system trying to protect their children, she created Rising Beyond Power and Control, often referred to as the Rising Beyond community, to help close the gaps in support for this population. Sybil hosts the Rising Beyond podcast and is active in legislative changes in Colorado for family court reform. Welcome, Sybil. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you, Nova, for having me.
Look, my absolute pleasure. Now, Sybil, I really wanted to pick your brains today, or get your insights because of your area of expertise into post-separation abuse, which includes victims navigating the family court system. And we all know how effective that is. And of course, everything else that goes along when you leave a domestic violence relationship and you are absolutely rock bottom.
Yeah, there's that belief that when a victim leaves, that they'll be safe and that things will be better and that they can just move on, they can heal. And that's not what happens. Abuse continues, right? The abuser's desire to control you doesn't just go away when you separate. And so post-separation abuse continues, especially if you share children, because then you will likely be in the family court system.
Yes.
Unfortunately, for a long time.
Yes. And talk to us, Sybil, about why these cases go on for so long. Why doesn't the abuser, who often has another soulmate, another victim to go to, what do they get out of this, in making the victim have this amount of stress in their life, spend all this money? What do they get out of it?
Yeah, sometimes it is punishment for leaving, for not allowing them to continue to abuse. And so it is demolishing you and harming you at all costs. So, and how they do that is often by using the children. Yeah. And so a lot of times it is just to ruin you financially and to punish you for that. But then it also has this added benefit of backup supply. So if, things aren't going how they want with their new person, all they have to do is send some crazy pants email or in their co-parent messaging app to their ex to get things going again, and they get fulfilled that way.
Yeah. So why do you think they would have a chance? Why do you think they would have a chance with this person who has watched them move on with someone else with that crazy email?
Yeah, so many reasons, right? But one is because a protective parent is going to be like a mama bear, and men can be in this situation too, where there's like a female abuser or another same-sex abuser and things like that. What we see here in the States is that the ones that are getting mostly abused post-separation are women.
Yeah.
And so they're mama bears and they want to protect their child.
Yeah.
And so, and especially if they haven't kind of gone through like the healing process, the legal system is not set up on the same timeline as a healing process, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter, the legal system doesn't care how much you've healed or not healed. And so they could get you at a really tough time as you're healing. They know exactly what to say to poke you and get you to react.
Yeah.
And so it works. It works.
Yeah. Or sometimes they go back because of the depletion of resources and just the ongoing punishment, the lack of support from the family court, that it seems, sadly, the better the devil you know. We hear that a lot, don't we? That some victims escape or get discarded from their abusive relationship, which I guess means they were able to escape. But they say that sometimes I wish I hadn't have left, because it was easier to put up with the black eyes and the barrage of verbal and psychological and emotional insults and abuse than to go through this. I just can't survive it, because it's the fear of the unknown, etc., and because their abuser continues to punish them.
Yeah, and like just your nervous system that helps us survive this, the way your nervous system has kind of regrown those connections is around safety. And so the input you got when you were with your ex-partner is kind of daily input of where your partner is right now. And so, your partner could come into the room, throw the mail on the table, and your brain computed like so quickly, this is how I have to act tonight to stay safe.
Yeah.
And when they no longer live with you, you don't have that input the same way. And so it is a little bit more, I guess, disturbing in that regard, because you don't know how to act some of the times, because you're not sure where, like, what a lot of my clients are like, when is the next shoe going to drop?
Yeah, exactly. I talk to my clients a lot about the fact that they're isolating and they're scared to do anything enjoyable and engage in any kind of passion in their life, because of that very fact. They're waiting for the bomb to drop. And we talk about the fact that they were conditioned to pair together anything enjoyable with disappointment, destruction, devastation, because that's what their abuser did. They destroyed any happiness, so they don't try, because that they're protecting themselves. It's like this coping mechanism, a survival technique. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, thank you, brain, like, thank you, lizard brain, for helping us survive this and getting through this. And now you are maladaptive and you're not helpful anymore.
Yes. Yeah. We don't need you. We don't need those trauma survival responses anymore. They kept me safe back then, but I don't need you anymore. But it doesn't work like that, does it?
No. And it needs to shift and change, because the danger is different, right? The danger isn't, oftentimes, sometimes it's still physical danger, because they're stalking post-separation abuse. And unfortunately, the time where most like homicides happen, domestic violence homicides, is post-separation. Yeah. So yes, there is a risk of physical harm, and it is this different form of abuse that you're just not used to having, right? It's done through attorneys. It's done through court evaluator. It's done with your kids, because they go back and forth between your home and their home. And so the methods change. And so we actually have to change with it.
Yeah, and that's hard it's nearly impossible unless you get lots and lots of support, because they made sure that you were so depleted when you left. So your self-esteem is rock bottom. You've got no self-worth. You've got no sense of self. And here you are having to change those maladaptive behaviors or get rid of them and replace them with positive responses when you've got no resources.
Yeah, no resources. That isolation is real. That's why I started the Raising Me On community. Is in my therapy practice, I saw very similar cases, those that had a strong support network, and then those that did not have any support network. And the differences in time of healing was huge. So the people that had a strong support network, they healed so much faster than the people that didn't have anyone in their corner except for their therapist, maybe their attorney, and that was it. And so finding that community and learning to trust again, and learning to, kind of trust yourself is, where that starts.
Yeah. So that's
really
the other
important
thing, isn't it, Sybil, is that on top of everything, I just said, as in self-worth, self-esteem, etc., this person who professed to love you more than anyone in the world, who simultaneously made you feel worse than anyone else in the world, but they made you feel like they loved you with those breadcrumbs. They did this to you. How are you supposed to trust anyone else? So you're depleted, and you've got to trust these people you don't know. Why would you think that they're not going to do the same thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it really is. It's like, and I've talked in the community a lot about how do you rebuild the trust? What do you do, right, to get that going? Yeah. So building trust actually starts with you first, right? So you need to be able to trust that you're going to be able to make the right decisions about other people, that you're going to set the right boundaries, that you're going to see the red flags, that you're going to be able to do these things. And so making sure that you start your healing process, right, with a therapist, with a coach, with someone who understands what you're going through. And that paired along with like the psychoeducation and like the learning about what is narcissistic abuse, what does this look like, what is family court going to look like? Because so many people have this belief that these are the people that they're going to help me, and they're going to keep right, like they have our child's best interest at heart.
Yeah,
I wish that was the case, and unfortunately, that's not what it looks like in most. Not even just most states here in the U.S., but most countries, that's not what it looks like.
Yeah, the family court system is just as flawed here, Sybil. And what is that going to do to a victim when they've been abused by the person who said they loved them? They've got no trust, and then they go to a system who promises to be fair. There's no corruption here. What are you talking about? They understand personality disorders. And you know what? Domestic violence, that's the top of every politician's tongue. So, of course, the judges and the lawyers and the mediators and the child advocates, they are all 100% on top of domestic violence. So how can I lose here? Because these guys are professing to get it, and they get abused again by the system.
Yep. And some of it is lack of real knowledge and understanding it. Some is bias in the family court system in general, the people that are in position there. So a lot of it's about money. So I don't know what it is in other places other than the States, but there's not a huge number. You would think there is, but out of all the divorces, the high conflict, and I always do the air quotes for high conflict, because that actually is abuse.
It's abuse.
The high conflict divorces.
Sorry, Sybil, the lawyers here in Australia call it conflict too, because they can't diagnose, I guess. But it's irritating, isn't it, when you hear?
No, it's horrific, because then the belief is that it's both parties. Both parents are causing conflict. And usually it's one person that's manufacturing all the conflict, and then someone who's traumatized is responding or reacting to the bait, basically, that the abuser is using. And so it's so hard, because again, as divorces go, there's a small number of all divorces that are considered high conflict. And that's where the majority of the money comes from in our court system.
Yes. Yes.
And so you have to, it depends on what day you find me on. If I'm particularly jaded, then I'm focused here in like the money and following the money. And that's why you're going to find money
talks, doesn't it? I mean,
yes, it does.
I think here in Australia, it's something like the average is 4 to 6% of high conflict cases that actually get to court. Now, my guess is that they're all going to involve an abuser and a victim. Unless you've got two rich Hollywood elites who never really were in a proper relationship, who are just battling it out and want to be on the stage, throughout the world. It's going to be a victim reacting to the abuse and their abuser, who is extending the domestic violence through the family court and is being rewarded by a system who doesn't get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the positive thing, because I always want to offer hope, because so often if you're reading the stories of family court and you're in the, Facebook groups or, the other social media groups, and you're hearing just the horror stories of family court over and over and over, it feels like there is no hope, like zero hope for you. And actually there is hope. There are ways you can work within the systems that will help you protect you and your family. But they're not accessible to a lot of families because they don't know. They're scared to reach out to anyone. They don't want to share what's going on because they feel so ashamed. And then there's it's still this secret, this dirty little secret that people don't want to talk about. And so, there are some things that you can do to improve not just your survival, just living, everyday living, but there are ways you can improve your chances of protecting yourself and your children in family court.
Yeah. So what are they, Sybil? Tell my listeners what they can do and where they should be searching, because often my counselling clients will talk about the fact that they just want it to all be over. That they just want give me the paper. I just want to sign it because it's never going to end, and I just want to get on with my life. And it won't be over. It won't be over. So they're often, not always, but often they're giving away their future. They're giving us, a settlement that is theirs and their children's, because that's what their abuser has beaten them down into doing it. But they do this on the premise that their abuser will then go away. But they will never go away unless you get that support, and where the court is going to make them go away, because then they've got your children. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and here, and again, this is state by state, there's some differences, but most of the time when you're, going through a divorce and the financials are final, right? When you sign the divorce decree, like those financials are final. Child support can change based on like jobs and things, but the other financials and settlements are final, whereas child custody, decision making for your children, those are not final. And so that's the loophole that an abuser is going to use is if you like, sure, I will agree to you having the kids this much and you can do all these things, but I get this money. And so, yes, a protective parents can be like, yes, oh my gosh, I will give you the world. I will give you everything. I want my baby safe.
It won't happen. It
and
will
then
never happen that way.
That judge signs it off. You think all's good, and boom, less than 6 months later, you might get a motion to change custody. Yes. And it's like, but you promised. Okay, let's remember the source. What have they promised?
Yeah.
What have they promised, and what have they? Right? Have they ever, made like? Have they ever reached those
pathological liars?
No, they have not. Yeah. And so it really is important to protect yourself. And some of this is protecting yourself legally. And I'm not an attorney, so I can't give legal advice. And I've seen so many of these cases that I've kind of seen what's working. But then also it's going to protect your mental health as well. And so I think that honestly, the number one thing that you can learn to do to protect yourself, to protect your kids, to look better in court is to learn how to communicate with your ex-partner, because you have to, in a way that you can feel good about how you present yourself, because we have no control over them. Yeah. Right? They're going to say what they're going to say. But that you can feel really good about how you interacted. And so that I highly recommend.
Sorry, Sybil, we're talking prior to any orders or anything. Okay. Yeah. I have. Yes. Yeah. I have a little kind of maybe a little different thought about post because of the fact that they're just going to counter parent everything you do.
Yeah.
And, yeah. And it's more about creating a paper trail like that. You're doing it for the court. You're not doing it because you think, oh, if I'm nice, they're going to be nice. But to me, it's really about creating a paper trail. Yeah,
paper trail. And I always say they're going to lie about you in court. They are. They are going to say horrific lies. Your jaw's going to drop because you think you know all the lies they're going to say, and then they'll pull out the doozy.
Oh, yeah. You're going to be an axe-murdering serial killer with 10 personalities who still believes in the tooth fairy. It's all going to come out.
There's going to be something. Yeah. And so the reason you're learning to communicate a specific way is for that paper trail, and it's to refute their narrative. So here, the number one narrative is parental alienation. That is the number one narrative here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you hear, and most places, but again, I practice in Colorado, if you are saying, yes, there was abuse in this relationship, yes, there was child abuse and neglect, yes, there was sexual abuse in this relationship, all they have to do is to muddy the water so that the judge doesn't really know what they're looking at, is to say they're alienating, the other parent's alienating. And so really what you do, and I do this like as soon as possible, right? If you like escape, and you're like, my children aren't safe with this person, we still have to lay the foundation that you are going to encourage the relationship that your child has with the other parent, even though that is not at all safe for your child. So we're adding some moral
crazy. Isn't it crazy that we have to manipulate, victims have to manipulate the system to get justice. We have to be manipulative.
Yes, and it goes against the very fiber of the majority of the people I work with. Yeah. And so it is really yucky. But what you're doing is you're responding in ways that are where you don't look crazy, where you look like you can co-parent, even though we're actually parallel parenting. We're not actually co-parenting here. Yeah. And that you are following the court's orders if there's orders.
Yeah.
And so you responding in these ways is going to prove their story wrong. And so, and that's on paper, right? That's
It's
like,
on paper.
look, you can look at this evidence of this. It's not he said, she said, look, it's right here.
Exactly.
And so that's why a co-parenting app's really important, because some judges will not take like emails, texts as evidence because they can be altered. Whereas in a co-parenting app, it cannot be altered. It's all time stamped and it's all court admissible.
I wish
so that's why I recommend the co-parenting apps.
Yeah, I always recommend the apps to Family Wizard and ones like that. But yeah, I don't think that judges make people use the app here. I could be wrong. I could be wrong because I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer either. I can't give legal advice. But so often I hear from people that they go to give, the app or suggest the app to their abuser. Of course, the abuser.
If it was your idea,
no. They're like, no, I'm not using that. I'm going to text you and you're a bad mother or you're a bad father if you don't let me text you 24 hours a day, access to you. I'm not using that app because they know that they can't continue the abuse, or if they do, it's going to be read out in court.
Yeah. And so it is really important to learn, right? Like the number one, if you don't do anything else, it is to slow everything down.
Yeah.
Right. Because you hear the ding, like that notification that you've got a talking parents or our Family Wizard notification, or you get a text, you look and it's your ex. Like your nervous system, right? Yep. You can't breathe. Your stomach hurts. Your shoulders are up.
Yeah.
And so if you respond in that state, it will not be a good response.
Yeah. I actually
slow it down.
Slow it down.
Slow it down.
Slow it down, guys. I actually go a step further. Well, after the orders are in place, I call it manipulating the manipulator prior to the orders. You've got to, well, basically you are always manipulating the manipulator because you're not being you're having to placate your abuser, so to speak. But prior to orders, the family court doesn't get it. So lots of smiley faces. Yes. I encourage co-parenting and all of that, fuzzy wuzzy stuff and rainbows and puppy dogs' tails. Yes, we'll definitely co-parent together. Whatever you need to do within reason to get that judge to think, oh, yeah, they're going to co-parent well, if you can. Not everyone's going to be able to do this because it's just too abusive, this situation. But afterwards, guys, if you're thinking, oh, I don't want to do that forever, once you've got those orders in place, I think you can tone that down a bit as long as you're keeping the paper trail. Just keep your contact with the abuser emotionless, like an affidavit. You can still answer their question without, being, what would be deemed as friendly. And, let's go have a cup of coffee. You can answer the question with one word. Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing that's so helpful, if you struggle with setting boundaries, because they're going to be like push, like any way they can, your court order, like that paperwork that the judge signs, that can be your gold, because that is what you can copy and paste. So they want to change their weekend with you, with the kids, because they looked ahead and they're like, oh, kid has Friday off, so I'm going to pick them up early this weekend and I get all this extra time with them, or whatever it is. But then you had a death in the family and they would not change weekends with you. Exactly.
Right? And so if you have the court orders, you can say things like, unfortunately, we're not at a place where we can collaborate well on this. Yeah. I'm going to follow the court orders written by such and such judge on such and such date. Copy, paste, send.
Exactly.
Done.
Now,
done.
perfect. That may mean, Sybil, that they're, as the victim, they are going to have to forego certain things. Like you said, there may be a death in the family, and you want your child on their week, but those orders are going to be your best friend in terms of boundaries. It's not me. This is what the court said, allocate it to the goalkeeper, to the third party. You're going to have to expect that, there's going to be things where you would want the children on their week, but you've got to weigh things up, hey, because that if you give them that flexibility, they will make your life hell. And you may find that whilst it's sad not being able to have your children at a certain event, what you gain by having those strict boundaries in place and them not being able to make your life hell with the flexibility, that is going to be worth it.
Yeah. And if we talk about what does it look like to win? And I don't even like that language, but that is the language of a narcissist. So their goal to win is to decimate you financially, yes, to ruin your relationship with your kids, right? To win for them. And for you, it's like finding peace, yeah, and keeping your kids safe, right? Like the very different ideas on that winning. And so if you are, further along in your healing process, you are able to limit your stress in certain situations, you will then be able to help your kids build resilience and find that peace.
Yeah.
Even if it's right, it is a mindset shift. Like one of the greatest mindset shifts that I heard. So I ran our second annual Rising Beyond retreat a couple weeks ago. And so we were talking, I set up the OGs, which are the, original gangsters who have been out of their relationship for, post decree for 6 years or something, right? They've been out for a
that
longer time.
So cool. Original
and
gangsters.
Set them up.
I love it.
With people who had just left, right? And so we kind of put groups together. So there was someone that had been through it and understood these things. And one of the mindset shifts that came up where it was like finding peace was that you are not responsible for making your ex follow the parenting plan or follow the court orders, that's not your responsibility. Yeah. And I see that so many women, they're not following the orders, and they try through these, talking parents or our family wizard to get them to follow the orders. And they really focus on the rules, but it's not your job to get them to follow the rules. Nope. It's your job to follow the rules and document that they're not. And that is it.
Yeah, breach them. Yeah, we know that you probably have to breach them 10, 12 times, but if you don't start, then, when it comes to the 12th time, you're basically starting from zero. So, yeah, I also think it's important to say that you've got to do your research when it comes to lawyers and barristers, because just like not every counselor is going to be the one for you. They might be good at certain areas. Not every lawyer is going to be the one for you, and you really, really need someone who recognizes these psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists, and is going to be, your bulldog, and is going to put a rocket up the backside of the family court, so to speak, to have your back. Is not going to encourage you to co-parent, is going to, encourage you to seek parenting orders. Yeah. Very important to
and close the loopholes in the orders. Yeah. So many of the parenting plans that I look at are horrible. They're template, and there's so many holes. And who's going to?
I just think they're useless. Those holes,
they're completely. And so, a really good attorney is not going to do a cookie cutter parenting plan with you. Yeah. They are going to tighten up the areas that need tightened up. Yeah. And so, as you're talking or interviewing attorneys, that's something that you can ask about, like, do your parenting plans look really similar? What do they look like when? And then kind of explain a piece of your situation. Because if they don't have a way that they've worked in high conflict divorce, then your parenting plan is you're wasting lots and lots of money on a plan that you're going to have to be back in court in 6 months to fix it.
Sybil, can I that's a bit confusing for me in terms of, I guess, maybe the differences between Australia and the US. Is a parenting plan in the US, is that enforceable by law?
Yes. So that is typically what we would consider like the court order. So there's all these different pieces, right? There's like the financial pieces, and but the parenting plan is the part of the court order that says who makes decisions about health.
Oh gosh.
What do the visits look like? Who has how much time with the child and things like that. So so that's kind of a part of ours. And loopholes for days in those when you don't have a well-trained attorney. And then the other piece of that is, what if you can't afford an attorney? There's a lot of people that cannot afford a family court attorney.
So I want to get on to that, what people can do, Sybil, but just quickly, for everyone who's listening, obviously I'm in Australia and Sybil's in the US. So when I'm talking about a parenting plan, in Australia, you will all know that they are not worth the paper that they're written on, and the narcissist will basically screw it up or go and use it as toilet paper, whatever they do with it. But it's not enforceable by law. So I always encourage people to go to court and get orders, which are enforceable by law. A parenting plan is a way the narcissist makes you think that, we'll do that. They get you to sign it, and it just extends the process, because as a victim, you find out 6 months later, they're not doing anything they said, and then you have to go to court anyway. So guys, in Australia, parenting plan useless, get orders, they are enforceable by law. US, it's different. A parenting plan is the order.
Yes, so that's a part of the order. You can do it in like mediation, and then it's just like a signature. And in a lot of cases here, it's required that you do mediation before you go to court. Just a waste of money, right? We're talking about the money, the money, and so it's just here's some $500 to a mediator you're not going to get anything done. You have to later.
You want a lawyer who's going to go, that's a waste of time because I predict they're going to do this, this, and this. So forget about that. Or you're going to have to do this mediation or whatever it is. It's just going to be a tick the box thing because we know we're not going to get anywhere with it. We're going to end up in court. So don't get your hopes up. If it happens, that's great. But this is where I envision it's going to happen, and this is what I'm going to prepare you for, and this is why I need you to get really strong. I'm preparing you for battle. You want a lawyer like that.
Yeah. And if you can't afford one, financial abuse is real. It's in 98% of all cases.
Yes,
and at least they can. People are spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in family court. And so it's sad. I have a bankruptcy attorney on my referral list because of that. Like, it's devastating that their goal is to bankrupt you. And what we found to be really, really helpful. So there are some like pro bono attorney agencies where they offer some pro bono services. It's really hard to get into those, and they are not typically domestic violence or, abuse informed. Like they might be, but less.
Yeah.
So what we've seen to be really helpful is kind of doing a lot of the research yourself, getting all the paperwork and things together, and then consulting with an attorney for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And so that you're doing everything right, right? You're filing the motion correctly. You're filling out the paperwork correctly. You've got kind of a plan. And so then you're only paying for 2 or 3 hours for them to review your stuff,
Yeah.
rather than a huge retainer where, here's $10,000 and it goes like this.
Yeah.
And so that's been really helpful for a lot of my clients, our community members.
Yeah.
Is doing that. And then getting connected with other survivors.
Yeah. Yeah. Word of
and
mouth.
that can feel hard.
Yeah.
And there are ways to do it, but you can learn from each other.
Exactly. So word of mouth is the best referral, isn't it? Find people who've done it, who've been there. And just quickly before we end, Sybil, I know in Australia that lawyers will do this, so I'm not sure how it is in the US. But if the lawyer, well, first of all, there's lots of lawyers who have fixed fees, which is so good for domestic violence victims, where you're not, racking up, $200 just for an email. It's fixed fees, which is wonderful. But there are lawyers here who will look at your case and, of course, see that you have no money in the bank, but then we'll look at the property pool and go, okay, he been financially abused. The narcissist, sociopath, psychopath has everything in their name. Yeah, we've got this person's number. We're going to read them their horoscope. So they put in a subpoena, or they file to get access basically to the victim's money, because they can see the property pool there. So they will appeal to the court to get some of that money. So basically they're asking the abuser, hey, you're going to have a $10,000 a day barrister, so's our client, because they want to make it an even playing field. So they will allow them to access that money if they can see that there's a property pool there.
Oh my goodness, nope.
No? Really? So are you kidding me? So victims who are financially abused, well, that just goes hand in hand. And the lawyers know that there's a massive, $5 million pool there that the abuser controls. They won't, there's no a capability to get the abuser to pay their fees.
No.
Oh my goodness.
Nope.
Well,
nope.
Blow me down
right?
with
It's
a
like,
feather.
Right. It is. And so they can look at those things, and, some attorneys, not all, right, will postpone payment or come up with payment plans so that if there's a separation of the finances and, a big chunk of finances goes to the victim, even though they didn't have any to begin with, and they can do a payment plan. But a lot of people are like, here's my retainer. Oh, look, I wrote these emails and I did this one thing. Retainer's up. I required this much money.
Oh my goodness. That's just setting
and so it is horrendous.
Fail. So
yes.
That's just making my head spin. So they've been with their abuser 20 years, got 6 kids, whatever. The abuser's got $10 million worth of resources. The victim's got nothing, and their lawyer won't represent them because they haven't yet got access to that $10 million that also belongs to them.
Very often.
I'm speechless.
Some will, right? Some will, because some are lovely.
Yeah.
And a lot won't. And
but
so it
could be dragged on for like 10 years.
Yeah, it will be a pro bono or a pro se case.
Yeah.
Versus an attorney that costs $500 an hour.
Wow.
And so it is.
I wonder why victims are going back to their abuser. Like, why wouldn't they?
Yep. Yeah, because the likelihood of them losing their kids is
on top. That's the main thing. Losing their children, but they've got to be able to hire the lawyer to get full custody of their children, or as much custody as they can, and then get access to the resources they need to support their children.
Mm-hmm. And so during the temporary orders, so that happens first, right? When it's like, we're getting a divorce, and here in the States, you do mediation, which is not helpful. And then you go to get temporary orders, which is a judge saying, okay, until the divorce is final, this is what child support looks like. This is what custody looks like. This is what maybe alimony looks like, which is not just, it's to help keep the family living a similar lifestyle that they were accustomed to living in.
Yeah.
It's not typically actually going to do that, but it'll be some. And so usually my clients, if they have alimony coming in, that's what they're using.
Yeah.
If they weren't allowed to work and they have no money, things like that. Then they can use the alimony to cover the attorney's fees, but that's actually supposed to be their living fee. That's how they're supposed to pay bills.
It's so messed up. Anyway, we're not going to fix it in a day, Sybil, but podcasts like yours and mine and all of the other narcissistic abuse, domestic violence, information podcasts, etc. out there, making a dent. So just in ending, can you just quickly tell people who are listening where they can go if they've got no money? What are some just really important steps to prioritize?
Yeah, I think number one is making sure that you and your kids have your basic needs met, because we can't do the healing. We can't do those higher level functioning things if you don't have security and safety. So it's like those number one things is finding safety and security for your family. And then I was going to say, I have a ton of resources on my website. I don't know if they're worldwide or just in the States. I have no clue. I should know that.
I will put Sybil's website in my description. So go there and have a look.
Yeah, because it's broken down into different resources, and one of them is legal. And so it's not just like attorneys, like recommended attorneys, but larger organizations that can help you, especially if you have to go pro se. Some ways to do that and to look at those things. So there's resources on my website for that specifically. And then, it's just getting as much education as you can without going down the rabbit hole. Because you can go down a rabbit hole and it be Alice in Wonderland, and you feel like a crazier person than you did before. And so kind of knowing you're like, okay, I have to stop right here. I'm not going to continue going down this hole. But it's like, it's finding a good therapist, finding a good attorney if you can afford one, good information. There's a ton of information by listening to podcasts, going on YouTube and watching different things on creating loophole-free parenting plans or documentation or how to communicate with your co-parent and all of these different things, because the information's out there and you can do this. You can do this. You absolutely can do this.
But you've got to, I think people have got to remember or be prepared to start this process when you are feeling the worst you've ever felt. Don't wait till you think you're feeling stronger and you're feeling much better to start the process. You've got to start it when you're rock bottom, because you can bet your bottom dollar your abuser will be getting all of their ducks in a row.
Yeah. And I always think of the phrase, and it didn't come from like a counseling, it actually came from a workout person that I follow, but it's all or something, as opposed to that all or nothing. You may not be in a place to do everything that you feel like you need to do to document and do this and make the spreadsheet and do the things.
Exactly.
But you can do something.
You can do something. Yeah.
And so all or something as opposed to all or nothing, because the nothing mentality means you're going to be frozen. Exactly. And so we can all do something. Yeah. And that's a good something that I've
I think that's
taken from this other arena.
Yeah, perfect. When we're referring to domestic violence victims, because really it's so overwhelming to start. So something.
Yeah.
Right? If you can start with 5 minutes a day, that's a win. You aim big,
Yes.
you miss big. You aim small, you win small, but you still win.
And celebrating those small milestones, those small victories, right, is so important to build that sense of self, that trust, so that you're in it for the marathon, right? It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, Sybil, look, I have enjoyed speaking to you so much today, and I just wanted to thank you for your time and providing us with so much information for victims and survivors of narcissistic abuse, coercive control, domestic violence. Guys, look for Sybil's website in the description to this podcast, and I'm sure if Sybil will come back, we will be able to get her fabulous insights again. So, yeah, thanks, Sybil. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and always welcome to share, right? The more of us that work together and collaborate, the better.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks, Sybil. And that brings us to the end of yet another Fake Love and Flying Monkeys episode. I hope you enjoyed that episode, guys. Oh my goodness, Sybil is such a wealth of information, and she's also such an incredible advocate for domestic violence victims and survivors, especially those who are having to look forward, in inverted commas, to having their day in the family court. Okay, now, if you would like to have a one-on-one counseling session with me, guys, no matter where you are in the world, please see my website link in the description. And of course, don't forget to get your copy of my best-selling book, Fake Love, Understanding and Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. On that note, it's bye from me for now. Until the next episode, remember, you are worthy of love, and you are worthy of so much more than a lifetime of fake love and flying monkeys.